I've been thinking about my hair. I think, first of all, because I think it maybe has kept me from getting a few church jobs. I'm a retired Episcopal priest. I had a congregation until April of last year, but I'm no longer. And I'm thinking that at least one of the things that's different is long hair. I have hair. You know, male pattern balding comes to those who probably their maternal grandfathers are the ones who pass it along to them. My maternal grandfather didn't live very long, lived into his 50s, but he had lots of hair. And as you can see, so do I. Although it's fine, it's not that heavy, lank hair that is so much nicer when it's long. I have it for a number of reasons. First of all, I have a memory. I only had one grandparent that I knew, my mother's mother. The rest of them were all dead by the time I was born. And my memory of her is especially, we were in New York City in Manhattan, and she was taking care of my sister and I. My sister was probably 3, I was maybe 7, 6 or 7 anyway. Maybe 8, I don't think I was that old. Anyway, what I remember of her was there was a breeze and her hair kind of wafted in the breeze. And so my long hair gives me that one memory I have of my only grandparent that I met. She died probably when I was about 8 or 9, shortly thereafter. Anyway, we were in New York. My uncle and aunt, my mother's sister, were going to get married in Wilmington, Delaware. But we were sort of in New York, just sightseeing, I suppose. My father and my uncle went to the same seminary. They were both ordained Episcopal priests, and that was in Boston. So they were used to the East Coast, at least in some sense of the word. And anyway, I have that memory of that hair just trailing off. Secondly, I have this hair this time because of COVID. We had that pandemic. We were all kind of confined to our houses and not getting haircuts. And it grew longer, and I had longer hair when I was young. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I just sort of let it grow when it'd been a long time. Taking a little better care of it now than I did when I had long hair when I was young, because I didn't really know anything about it. It was, I see there's a singer on Instagram or TikTok named Oscar Stembridge, and he's a teenager, and his hair is always, I want to reach out and brush it. Of course, my hair gets messy too, so I understand that. When I was growing up, I grew up in the 1950s. That was a long time ago. And several things about the 50s were probably unusual. One is that every male child that I knew pretty much had what we called in those days crew cuts, just hair mowed off. I don't think until I went to college, I don't think I ever had hair longer than about an inch. I remember we had a sort of a special thing that I could have a couple of longer hair in the front, and we called it a Princeton. But it was short hair, and it was, you know, pretty much every 2 weeks you went to the barber and got it mowed. Now the reason for that was the 50s were just after World War II, and you know, something like 14, 15 million people had been in the military, and so that sort of wartime well, I think repression is what I thought of it, and I never liked the 50s very much. I know there are people who love the 50s and want to go back there, but it would be the last place I'd want to go to, because it seemed to me pretty tamped down. And as I recall, the political stuff was pretty boring for the most part. Now I look back on that and I think, great. Well, I'll take boring. But what's going on now is just absurd. But in the 50s, we all had our hair mowed off. And so when I went off to college, I was a freshman at Washington U in St. Louis, and I remember it clearly because I was on the swimming team at Washington U. I was a freshman, and in the spring, I remember we were doing our laps, and somebody put on a song, "I Want to Hold Your Hand," the Beatles. I'd never heard them before, but they just burst onto the scene, and they had long hair. My goodness, we were shocked by their long hair. And you look back at those pictures and you realize it wasn't very long. It was only just kind of here. It wasn't even touching their shoulders or anything. It very soon thereafter, rock stars let it really go much longer. But at the time, it was still shocking because we had been so confined to what now would be called buzz cuts, crew cuts, that to see hair on a male that was longer than that was shocking. The 60s were, well, I actually am not a baby boomer. I was born 2 months before the end of World War II in Europe. VE Day was in May. I was born in March, and of course, Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened in August, and the war was over. My dad was in the Pacific. He was gone. I didn't see him till I was about 2 years old. That's kind of at least part of the memories I have. I don't remember that because I was too young, but anyway, back to the hair. Well, eventually, over a long period of time, I eventually became an Episcopal priest as well. So, you know, it's a family of priests, my father, my uncle, and me. Both my father and my uncle are dead and been gone a long time. My uncle had a great head of hair. Of course, he was no relative directly, but my dad had hair, but it was like mine. It was you know, wasn't that lank hair. It was that fine hair, and he was slowly going bald, and he only lived to 54, so I suspect he would have had some baldness by the time he was in his 60s, but who knows? Anyway, I eventually became a priest, got ordained, and have served for 40 years as a priest. And in that time, I had a number of Native American people in my congregation. And Native people have a sort of a special relationship with long hair. It's sort of a self-expression, almost a spiritual thing. At least as I've queried them and heard them talking about it. It was, it was sort of a looking at the white culture and saying, look, Native people in general were not, I found them, they have great sense of humor, and they particularly laugh at us, as well they should. It's a good way to handle the terrible relations that are between us. Now, most of my family was here after the Indian Wars or just before them, and weren't involved in them directly, but obviously white culture was doing what it was doing. But part of the reason I have long hair is also in respect to those people that I knew in my parishes who were Native people and who had a special sense of self-expression by their long hair. And of course they had long, lank, dark, beautiful hair. Not this, well, I'm mostly Irish and German, so this is, washed out old man hair. But it's hair, and I like it, and maybe it's kept me from getting a few opportunities to supply in the church. But I have it for a reason, and I've just outlined those reasons. A memory of my grandmother, kind of a reaction to my childhood when we couldn't have long hair, and the shock when long hair burst upon us in the 1960s. And just the memory of COVID and mortality. It's sort of like, ashes on Ash Wednesday. They put them on your head. Your ashes, and to ashes you shall return. It's a symbol of mortality for me, among other things. And it is what it is. And I must say it's it's a little more work, a lot more work than a crew cut, that's for sure. But after I've had a shower and it's clean and it's dried out and it's really combed nicely, it looks good for a few minutes anyway. So blessings, hair, wonderful thing.